Hey everybody, what's up? Thank you for joining me on today's episode. We have Christian Muenzner from Obscura, Eternity's End, Alkaloid, Necrophagist, Spawn of Possession. Christian has done some of the best guitar playing on record in the last 20 years. Great jazz fusion, technical death metal, you name it. Check it out.
Christian, how you doing, man? Thank you for joining me. You've been super busy. Tell me what you've been up to.
Yeah, man, I just returned from a tour in South America. We've been touring South America with Obscura. It was pretty intense. We did Buenos Aires, Sao Paulo. We did Santiago, Chile. We did Lima, Peru. We did Guatemala. We did San Salvador, Costa Rica, Colombia, and then Mexico Metal Fest. And now, actually, I am currently demoing some new song ideas for the next Obscura album. But in 3-4 days from now, I'm going on tour because we're touring Europe, supporting Decapitated. I think it's the UK, mostly the UK and Ireland. So it's going to be like 17 dates until Christmas. So yeah, I've been pretty busy, but yeah, always good seeing you. And yeah, thanks for the invitation. Happy to chat.
Oh, no problem, man. Thank you for being here. And I saw the flyer for the UK or the British Isles tour, and man, you guys are playing like every single town that's got over 10,000 people in it. That's freaking awesome. I was lucky enough to just be over there this last summer, and we did 3 days. And man, well, that's really cool. You guys are going to do 17 days over there. Are you playing places that are new? Or
yeah, I mean, we played UK and every European tour that we did, but usually the bigger cities. You know, we did London, Bristol, Manchester. On the tour last year, we also did like Dublin and Glasgow. But this time, I mean, there's so many places I haven't been to yet, and I'm curious to see how it goes, you know, because usually you just play the major markets. So that's going to be interesting. Not looking forward to being in England this time of the year. You know, the weather is usually pretty sucky around November, December there. But anyway, I hope it's going to be a good tour. I'm definitely looking forward to it. I mean, the band sounds pretty good right now because we've been touring all the year. You know, we just did the South American tour, so I'm pretty confident about our performance. I think will be a good time.
Oh, I'm sure it will be. Like you said, you guys have been touring nonstop. This is like for the last 2 years, it's just been like a whirlwind for you guys. And you know, you had mentioned earlier that you've been home for like a week and you're sick. So hopefully you get the immunity you need to get out there and not get sick on the road, because there's nothing worse than that.
Yeah, that's the worst. And usually happens to me every time. You know, because on these nightliners, I mean, the AC and stuff, one person gets sick and then everyone gets it. But I'm hoping that now my immune system is up, you know, because I've been dealing with this stuff for about a week now. So so I hope that this time I get around it. We'll see.
Oh, I'm sure you will, man. Your guitar playing skills will eradicate all diseases coming forth. And
I hope so.
Speaking of which, that new Alkaloid record that you guys did was freaking fantastic too. I think, you know, definitely one of the top releases of the year for sure. And what was that like doing that record?
Yeah, actually, I got it right here. I just recently got actually the original copy. It's like this media book, you know, the label that did like a really nice job with it. Well, you know, the recording for this album and the writing took a long time. I think we've been working on this record for 3 or 4 years. And the rhythm guitars for this album, I already recorded them before we went on the first tour with Obscura last year. So I recorded the rhythm guitars in November 2021, actually, right? So quite a while ago, so almost 2 years before the album was released. And then the guys were doing vocals and Flo did acoustic guitars and Linus did the bass, and they were working a long time on the vocal arrangement. And then I was pretty late delivering my solos because I was constantly touring. So in between tours, when I was home, I was working on recording some solos or doing some overdubs and stuff like that, you know. And then obviously, because the album is pretty monstered out in terms of the arrangements, the mix took a long time as well. So it was a work in progress for quite a while, you know. And also, in the meantime, our guitar player Danny left the band, so me and Flo did all the guitars basically on that record. So we had a lot more work than on the previous records, because Danny usually took a big load of the rhythm guitars. And so, but I'm really happy with how it turned out. It was like one of these things, you know, you're working on it for such a long time that while you're working on it, you can't even tell anymore, is this any good or does it have any quality? Do I like the songs? Because, you know, you can't really see the forest for all the trees, basically, right? And then it was good to kind of step back, and I didn't really, because Hannes did the mix, I wasn't really involved in that. And then not really hearing the album for a while and then hearing the finished product and then actually hearing it with fresh ears. And I'm actually really happy with the album. In my opinion, it's actually the best one that we did so far. I like the production a lot. I also like the fact that it's a little bit more death metal, a little bit more heavy on the riffs compared to the last one. I mean, I like the last one also, but it was more like dealt with a lot of like progressive rock elements, which we still have here, but I think we definitely amped up the death metal element of our style on this new one. So I'm quite happy with that.
Yeah, I agree, man. Like, it's definitely like more aggressive, definitely has a stronger death metal vibe to it. It's a really great album. And
I'm glad you like it.
Oh yeah, dude. Like, as soon as I was waiting for that thing, and I was gonna ask, so like when you finish recording stuff, do you just kind of like let it go and never go back and revisit it? Like once it's done, you've heard it so many times, like the forest through the trees thing. Like you just like it is what it is, and you let it go, and then you listen to it every once in a while, like because you're over it at that point.
Yeah, because when you're writing and then practicing the songs, recording them, the mixing decisions, all the stuff, you're hearing the album so many times. So by the time it's done, the last thing I want to do is listen to my own record. I mean, I love listening to music, but I rarely listen to my own stuff because it's like, I can't usually hear it anymore at that point. And usually, I have a hard time listening to my own stuff because I'm over analytical, like I'm always thinking like, oh, maybe we should have done that differently or that. And so it's usually exhausting for me to listen to my own stuff. But what I can do, I can actually, I don't really like any stuff that I did like longer than 5 or 6 years ago, because obviously I would change a lot of things because I think I evolve as a player, as a writer, as a producer. But with the new stuff, it's too new, it's too recent. So usually what happens is I do a record, it's finished, I cannot listen to it. Then I do another record, and when that comes out, I can listen to the previous one, because at that point I can let it go and accept the previous one for what it is. But when something is really recent and really new, it's like I have a hard time, listening to it.
Absolutely. I think most people that record music are probably that way, where it's just kind of like, okay, like every time you listen to it, it's like, there's like spots you pick out in your mind, like, oh, I should have done this differently, or like, oh, here comes that part that wasn't, like you're apprehensive just listening to it because you're like, oh man, or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And that's, like you said, 6 years is in the past. I mean, the new stuff that you're doing, I think you're playing better than you ever have. I mean, I think all the new music, I mean, even the Eternity's End, that power metal stuff was great too. And is there any plans for Eternity's End?
Well, I've written a lot of songs, usually I'm like recently, whenever I've not been touring and inspiration hit me, I've just been writing stuff. And usually I write riffs, collect riffs, and they turn into songs. And I usually don't instantly know when I write riffs and stuff what band they're for. Like, is this going to be an Obscura song? Is this going to be an Eternity's End song? Obviously, it depends a lot on the vocal and drum arrangements, because that's obviously very different in those two bands. And I want to do another Eternity's End record, but like right now I haven't completely outlined the direction I want to take with the next one. And also we're having to do this new Obscura record, because I've been touring on the album for 2 years now. And so I've been writing a lot of Obscura stuff also. And so I think that's going to be done first, So I think first we're going to finish a new Obscura record. I've also written some stuff for instrumental solo EP, like 4 or 5 tracks. And definitely I want to do another Eternity's End one, but I don't know if this is going to happen in 2024. Probably guessing it's rather 2025 if there's going to be another one. Because like I have this new Obscura album and my solo EP on my plate, and there's a couple more tours planned for the next year, and I joined this band Retromorphosis, which is the old Spawn of Possession guys. This album is finished, actually. It's just being mixed right now. But there's probably some stuff happening with that also in the next year. So I don't really know if Eternity's End is going to happen in 2024. Like I said, more likely 2025. But it's not done yet. I mean, I definitely want to do another record with that band. I still have the itch to play that style of music. Yeah.
Man, you are a busy guy, dude. I mean, and I was going to ask, like, how do you like divert, like you were talking about, like which songs go to which band? I mean,
yeah,
because we all play like ourselves, like we are our own entity or whatever, but like what goes in the Obscura folder, what goes in the Alkaloid folder, what goes in the Eternity's End? And I guess like that's got to be a tough decision because like when you write music, do you have certain things in mind for the drums? Do you have certain things in mind for the vocals?
Yes, usually I know, this riff is going to be a main riff, this riff is going to be a vocal part, this riff is going to have that pacing and that kind of drum beat. I usually have that in mind, but sometimes I experiment. For some reason I wrote a song and I had like the riffs and certain drum pacings, and I was like, oh, this could be like a power metal kind of song. But then I listened to it and I was like, this song is actually really, really fast, and I do like melodic vocals on top of that, right? And then I experiment and I was like, okay, let's see what this riff actually sounds like with a blast beat, And if you listen to the last Obscura record, Our Addiction, and you listen to Embers of War by Eternity's End, the riffing style at times isn't actually that different. It's just Obscura has blast beats, obviously, which Eternity's End doesn't have. Eternity's End has clean vocals. Some riffs, when I want to write for clean vocals, I have to leave a little bit more room sometimes for the vocal melodies. I can't go as busy as in Attack, that kind of context. Usually the way it goes is like I focus on one band or one album at a time, kind of writing that. And then I don't really worry if I write an Eternity's End record and I go like, okay, that riff could also have fit in Obscura or not. But it was like, last time it was different, because when I did the last Eternity's End record, I started writing that one before I rejoined Obscura, right? So I started writing this one in late 2019, early 2020. Then I rejoined Obscura. Then I already had in mind what kind of songs I want for the album, so I could finish this. And then I focused on writing the Obscura record. So I was like really, I'm focusing on one band at a time. Usually right now it's a little bit different, because like I said, I've been brainstorming riffs and I don't know yet. Some songs obviously are very obvious Obscura songs, some songs are obvious Eternity's End songs, but there's a couple of songs or riffs where I'm not really sure. And usually what I'm doing is like I'm demoing stuff, showing it to the guys in the bands, and then get some feedback, because sometimes it's like I work on it so much and it's hard to find the distance, to know like where does this fit in. Sometimes I experiment, would this work for a clean vocal melody? But I figure when you, especially working with clean vocals and choirs like we're doing Eternity's End, it's a bit tricky, because if you overload the stuff with crazy guitar stuff and so on, then you don't really leave room for the vocals. And then the vocals are so important in that style of music. And sometimes you might do something really busy, but it's not really the focus on that, because there's a vocal melody on top of that, right? So there's also like with regards to that, I mean, I feel like I'm still learning with all that stuff, and with regards to that, I want to put even more focus like on like doing the vocals, writing the vocal melodies, really have them carry the songs, on the next Eternity's End. So I guess the most busy riffing will probably go in the Obscura stuff, I guess, right? Because we usually, most of the time, we have harsh vocals and it allows a little bit more freedom in terms of the riffing on the guitar.
Nice, man. It sounds like, it's definitely a thoughtful process, and it would have to be. I mean, obviously there's probably things that right away where they go, but you had mentioned a new project with the folks from Spawn of Possession. Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Now that's awesome, man. Like so many great songs. I mean, like I remember you had mentioned in an interview that you had recorded the guitar solos through a Line 6 Pod Pro rack mount.
That's one of these things I wish I could change, because I still love that record. I really like my solos on the record, but I feel like, man, if I had done them with the setup I have nowadays and with the gear I have nowadays, it would sound so much better. A lot of things would be more audible, to the people. They would come out a little bit more clear. I mean, all the guitarists, they kind of understand there's a lot of stuff going on, but people who are not that deep into it, that the sound and the tone actually matters a lot, and it's something I wouldn't really admit to myself in the past, but it's like one of these things nowadays. I think like I really like my tone from 2014 on, but the records I did before, I really wish I could go back in time and just do them with the setup I have nowadays. I used the Line 6. I mean, considering it was a Line 6, they actually sound pretty good, but they would sound a lot better nowadays if I would like use the iTracks and reamp or use my XFX or something like that, So yeah, it's one of these regrets I have about some of these older records.
I don't know, dude. It's making the best of what you got, that's for sure, because it definitely worked. I mean, it might have something to do with your playing, but hey, man, we all thought it was good. And speaking of gear, like what are you using when Obscura plays live? What are you using?
So when we play live nowadays, I mean, on the tours last year, we still used our angle setups, but right now, simply for convenience reasons, we switched to Kempers, and Fredrik Nordström in Sweden, he profiled all the tones that we used on the recent Obscura record on Evil Addiction. And we tweaked them a little bit to work in a live setting, but basically, this is what we're using. Stefan uses his ESP guitars. Obviously, I use my Siggi Braun signature guitar. And basically, that's it. I mean, obviously, we're having a laptop running with a click track because we all use in-ears nowadays. Because some of the keyboard parts and acoustic guitars and things like that are important to carry some of the compositions that are coming from the backing track, and we play the rest. And therefore, we all have the in-ear. And even for the songs that don't have any tracks, when we use the in-ears, I just figured with these, like, 240 BPM blast beats and stuff, the band just sounds much tighter. I like, nowadays, since I've been used to that, I can't even imagine anymore how we did that in the past, without it. When you can't really hear anything, maybe you hear the kick drum on the monitor, then like some of it, the trigger goes off and you just hear the left foot or something, and then you have to play on an 8-note blast beat. It's like actually super, super hard, And now when you have the click track, it's just very comfortable. We have this app on the phone called a mixing station, and everyone can do his own individual in-ear mix. And that doesn't really change, from venue to venue. And that's interesting. Obviously, sometimes you have the PA a little bit more loud than other times, so sometimes you have to adjust a little bit. But most of the time, you basically have your same monitor sound every time. And that's with that style of music. I mean, I understand a lot of people have a very puristic kind of attitude, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm an old school guy myself, but I think if you want to do it like that, like just straight into amp and no click tracks and stuff like that, then you need to compose the music differently, right? You need to produce the albums differently. And we tend to overproduce in Obscura and Alkaloid. And I think when you do that and you want to deliver a good live show, you have to have the technical stuff to actually do it, right? I mean, I maybe one day I want to do like an old school death metal record, like an old Entombed record or something like that, or an Incantation record, kind of like that, where it's really all like free and the whole sound aesthetic is very different, that you can actually do this, But I think with the style we play, this definitely makes more sense that way nowadays,
Absolutely, man. And I think it's an art in itself to play in time. Playing to a metronome is something that's, once you get used to it, it's it helps, like, I don't know, like maybe your nerves, if you're nervous or you're excited, or it helps in a live setting, it helps bring everybody in. And as far as like backing tracks are concerned, I mean, I've used them myself, and sometimes it's been out of necessity, but it makes sense, for switching. It makes sense for synth parts, and it makes sense for atmospheric things. So, I mean, it's there because I think that the audience deserves the best show that you can give them.
Yeah, exactly. So I think, I mean, in the old days, I mean, I remember when I saw Iron Maiden live in '93, they had a keyboard player. I could see it. He was next to the stage and he was doing all these like sound effects and stuff like that, and it's like we would be awesome to have everything played by real people and have like 20 people on stage, but we can't afford that, And I think, that way it definitely makes more sense. The cool thing is also now we have this, obviously we use wireless systems, and we have this MIDI switching thing where the session that's running automatically switches the channels. So when I have a solo part coming up, I don't have to switch myself, but it switches automatically to the solo channel. It switches automatically to clean channels when there's clean parts and things like that. So that's actually pretty cool. It's actually very convenient, and you can really just focus on the playing and how you move on stage and things like that. I remember back in the day, I had a lot of harmonies on the early Obscura records, harmonized a lot of stuff in the solos, and there were key changes, and there was always like switching the stuff in real time. And I remember there was one solo where I had to hit the MIDI board like 16 times or something within the solo, And this is definitely much more convenient nowadays, So yeah.
Oh, I believe it. I think anything when you're playing live and you're playing demanding music, that's going to give you peace of mind. I'm sure the first couple of times there's a little bit of apprehension going, okay, I hope this, switches when it's time to,
Right.
But I mean, that's the beauty of playing in time. All sorts of stuff's, possible. And, I suggest to anybody, man, if you're going to if you can pull it off and, use a in-ears with a click, but like you said, though, too, like the old school style, like Entombed, I mean, I saw Dismembered at where was it? I think it was at Brutal Assault or Alcatraz.
Okay.
And it was awesome. I mean, that's just a straight up, raw band, and that was great. So there's something to be said for the old way as well. You know what I mean? And playing by feel.
But this music is written differently, the different style of music, and I love that stuff. And if I would do something in that style, I would definitely go the old school route. Like tube amps, not a lot of effects, no click track, and just playing. But yeah, then you have to write and produce the music accordingly, and also that kind of stuff works. That's definitely my opinion, because the people, they still expect it to sound polished when you do the style that we play. You know, obviously when you play in a band like this, member and tune is very different. People expect the rawness, you know. So there's certain styles where you can get away with certain things, and there's certain styles where certain things are necessary, right? I mean, that's just the way it is.
Absolutely, man. And like you know, it's kind of like you said, you know, the writing is different, the composition's different, and you know, and part of the stuff that makes each one of those styles awesome is the raw feel. Nobody wants to, you know, hear technical death metal that's not precision, because that's part of what it is. Exactly. Is the precision of it. Exactly. And the old school stuff is the feel of it, you know, the
atmosphere and the grittiness, you know, and the attitude. So yeah.
Totally, man. So let's talk about your signature model guitar, dude.
Oh yeah.
I was fortunate enough to meet you at NAMM in April, and
that's when it all started. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, we had a couple of beers and a coffee.
Yeah, I remember that.
And yeah, it was good times, man. And freaking so you obviously played Ibanez for a really long time, and they're great guitars. And then you went over to Siggi Braun. So how did you start your get your signature model with Siggi? How did that happen?
Well, I've been with Ibanez for a very, very long time, and still some of the Ibanez I have are some of my favorite guitars. Like I have a Gem from '91, for example, is still one of my favorite guitars that I have. And I liked all the models they gave me, like the RG I have from 2013 and the RGD that I used on the older Obscura records, you know. And then what happened was, you know, because of my hand problem, I can't really play the RGD live because of the longer measure. It gives me more trouble with my hand condition. And I still use it in the studio, or used it in the studio a lot. Now I don't, because now I play everything on the Siggi Braun because it sounds so awesome. But I used to, before I had that model, still record all rhythm guitars on that RGD, because when I'm sitting down in the studio and stuff, I can still do it. But live, like it's just too demanding because I can't really use my middle finger, and having to stretch wider than usual just doesn't work for me. So what happened was, we started touring with Obscura, and I asked Ibanez if they can give me like a prestige model with a shorter measure, so I can actually play on it, you know. And they gave me 2 RGs, but I had so many issues with the tuning, and apparently these were the only models they had in the market right now with the shorter scale neck and something. And man, I got so fed up with the tuning issues, and I don't know why that happened. It happened on both guitars, and actually I had some other people talk to me who played the same models, and they have the same problem, but there wasn't anything else available. And then one time on tour last year, I got so fed up that I was like, fuck it, I'm going to continue playing on an ESP right now, you know. And then I made a post on Facebook that I basically left Ibanez, and then obviously a couple of companies started writing me. But I've been aware of Siggi Braun before, because a friend of mine, Connor McRae, I think you also met him at NAMM. He's been playing them for quite a while, and I've been talking to him. And then one of my students, Michael Baller, also plays one, and he basically mentioned this company to me. And they're actually from Germany, so that was quite good because of the logistic kind of makes it easy logistically, you know. And so I had them. Basically, they were willing to build the guitar completely according to my specifications. I actually have it here, so I can show you. So actually, so my idea was to have a guitar that is actually 27 frets instead of 24. And I'm not sure how good you can see it on the camera.
Yeah, put it down a little bit. There you go. Sweet. Like, yeah. Thank you.
And so the idea was, because, you know, what happened on the older Obscura records is I was used to record my solos in standard tuning, even though the rhythm guitars were tuned down a whole step. And sometimes I would use the 24th fret for a tap note or something, for these sweep tapping things that I do. And live I couldn't do it because I was running out of frets, right? So I was like, I need at least like 26. So I asked them to make me a 27 fret guitar. So on the high E string I actually have 27 frets. I think Brenton Ellis new Jackson model, I think, has something similar, but it was a coincidence. I don't know if it came out before or after, I don't know. But that was actually my idea for a long time, to have that, you know. And it's actually scalloped from fret number 12 on, because I always like the scalloped frets on the Malmsteen struts. But for soloing, but I never found it very useful for rhythm playing, right? And for rhythm playing, that's why the lowest 12 frets I have not scalloped, and from 12 fret on, everything is scalloped. It has a Charlotte tremolo, only 2 springs in the back. Has a Seymour Duncan Nusskell bridge pickup. And I wondered, because a lot of these 80s shred models, they had this angled single coil, which has a specific type of sound. And that's the kind of tone I like, this Winnie Moore, Greg Howe kind of like lead tone. And because I used a Fender heavy metal Strat for some of my solos on the last Obscura record, which had like this amazing single coil tone. But a single coil that you could angle didn't really exist for a 7-string guitar. So this is custom made. It's by a German brand called Heisenberger. And they made this pickup basically custom made. Yeah, the guitar has a reversed headstock, has the crackle design with this like kind of avatar color. So my idea with this guitar was basically to combine the nostalgic 80s shred aesthetics, but with the necessity of the modern stuff, right? With 7-string and for down tuning and everything. And yeah, I mean, I've been playing this the whole South American tour now with this record, which was basically the test, for it, because you have facing hard conditions, flying every day, changing weather conditions, whatever. And I never had any issues with the tuning at all. And I could change strings like 2 hours before the set, and it stays in tune 100%. It has these nice locking mechanisms here. I don't really know what it's called, but you have this extra screw or wheel. So you just put the string through it once, and then you tighten it from the back. And it's super stable. And yeah, I'm absolutely in love with this guitar. So everything I'm recording now, all the recording on this guitar. So yeah, I couldn't be happier with it. So yeah, that's that.
When we were at NAMM, I was able to play some of the guitars at their booth, at the Siggi booth, and they were really nice guitars. And fortunately, they offered me to make me a model for myself, and I got one. And I have to agree with you, man. And I pretty much like ripped your specs off, just to be honest. And they're great guitars, dude. And I got the slanted humbucker thing going.
Right, I can see it because you have the guitar hanging there, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. And it sounds really unique. It sounds really cool. I mean, obviously I'm using a full-size humbucker, but they're really good guitars, dude. And I was, like I said, the first time I actually played my guitar, I got it in Romania, and they shipped it to the Backline company. And so I
think I saw it on Facebook. You were on tour at that time or something, right?
Yeah. And I was just, amazed by the quality. And so anyway, man, that's awesome to hear that you put all those shows in South America. Those things are built like a tank, dude.
Yeah, they're definitely made for the touring conditions. I think a lot of guitar brands nowadays, obviously, other brands, they want to produce cheaper and things like that. And nowadays, the touring musician isn't really for many. I feel for many bigger brands, it's not really the focus anymore. They focus on the Instagram and TikTok players, right? And if you play 15-second clips, probably pre-recorded in your bedroom, you don't really have to have the same requirements that you need when you're touring. You have to fly every single day. You're having different weather conditions. You play on a tour, you play like I don't know, you play maybe in Mexico, and then you play in Canada and it's minus 30 Celsius or something like that. So it's changing, and the guitar still has to remain in tune with all these things. And these instruments, they definitely, like this guitar is definitely made for that. It's a little bit more pricey, but I think it's totally worth it because you really feel the difference, and you can. I also noticed, like our sound engineer said, it's such a difference in tone compared to the past, so you can really hear that this is a good and expensive guitar, basically, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've played a lot of guitars where a good guitar is a good guitar. The price is inconsequential. There's lots of guitars that are $500 that play better than guitars that are $5,000. I mean, we all know the brands, what they are. Yeah. And but at any rate, I'm sure like when you went and played in like somewhere like on the coast of South America, and then went to like Peru to play. I mean, that's an extremely dry place, and the guitar held up, and you didn't have any tuning problems. The body didn't split in half or anything.
Yep, exactly right. And so usually, because I also noticed sometimes with some cheaper guitars, when you're flying a lot, it kind of changes things about the neck and about how it feels. But with this guitar now, it still feels like the same way when I got it on the first day, even like 18 flights later or something. It's still still feels the same, you know, that this is actually really, really good.
And I have another question for you. So I noticed that you got, like you said, you have a Seymour Duncan pickup in the bridge. Why did, at one point, I swear you used to use active pickups. Why did you change?
Because for me, they kind of lack the transparency that I like. You know, it's just the way they react. I mean, obviously, I mean, the style of music I play mostly is very technical music, like technical death metal or the technical power metal stuff. So I usually play with a lot of high gains. I'm not saying I need the same kind of a definition dynamics like a player like Robin Trower would, for example, or something. You know, it's of course I'm aware of that, but still, I still feel there's certain dynamics. Still with the high gain tone and with the production method used, there's still like room for dynamics in terms of how you're muting and how you hit the string and things like that. And I've just found that the active pickups they didn't give me that same spectrum of dynamics and definition, you know. So that's why I actually switched to that. So yeah, I've had an EMG. I mean, the Epitaph was recorded on an RG with the rhythm guitars with an EMG in the bridge. But yeah, for kind of the way I wanted to sound, I don't know. It sounds too. It's hard to describe, but it just wasn't dynamic enough for me, you know. And that's why I switched.
Cool. Like, I mean, EMG is an active. I mean, every active pickup, any pickup in general, has its own tonal quality to it, and
yeah,
you know, maybe the articulation is something that, you know, was a little bit different with an active pickup.
You know, yeah, there's also one. I mean, I'm experimenting a lot, obviously, over the years, the last 20 years, you know, and what I really figured out is like a lot of people say, oh, you need high output pickups, you know, and some people then they say, oh, reduce the gain on the amp and things like that. And for me, it's actually, I figured the opposite, you know, it's like not having too high output pickups, but using relatively high gain on the amp instead of the other way around, you know. So that's usually what works for me. And actually, now a little bit of a controversial figure, but I remember a couple of years back I had a talk when Iced Earth were touring, talking to John Schaffer, and he basically said this, you know, like low output pickups but relatively high gain on the amp. And I figured this kind of works for me too, you know. That's definitely the way I feel about it too.
Nice, man. And like I remember the Cosmogenesis was, I remember seeing the video for Anti-Cosmic Overload, and you were playing when I was, you know, back in the day, and you had the EMGs rocking, and so that's where I was like, oh, cool. So that actually once I used to use the passive pickups as well, but then I got into the active pickup thing. But I was just curious because you know, your style is extremely clean. Like that's one thing about your playing style is the articulations there, and it's super smooth. And I was going to ask you, do you, when you're playing solos in the studio or live or whatever, do you really use your neck pickup quite a bit when you're doing that?
I use it quite a lot, actually. I use it quite a lot, especially for all the wide intervallic stuff. When I do these wide intervallic string sweeping, tapping things, or even the fast picking runs or the sweeping stuff that I do, I usually use the neck pickup because it sounds a little bit smoother, you know. And that's usually I switch back and forth a lot between the neck and the bridge pickup, like Yngwie does. I mean, I kind of got that from Yngwie from watching his old videos, and you see him switch all the time when he does a solo. And this is also one of the things, you know, because when I ditched the Ibanez guitars and I played in Steffen's ESP guitars for a while, I used his Horizon on the last couple of tours before I got this one. And actually, I didn't like the positioning of the pickup switch on the ESP, right? Because I couldn't really, the way I play, it's kind of like I wanted to have it like on a strut, right? So that when I play, I can just, while I play, switch back and forth, you know, with my pinky. And I don't, because it happens subconsciously, I don't even think about it much. And that's why I also had the pickup switch positioned here, like, so it's very similar to how we have it on a strut or like on my old Ibanez guitars. So yeah, so I'm switching actually quite a lot. Longer notes I usually play on the bridge pickup, you know, like vibrato stuff and bendings and longer notes. So usually, yeah, I switch back and forth basically all the time. Only an Epitaph, actually, all the solos where everything was completely recorded on the neck pickup. But it's because Mohammed wanted us to kind of do it like that. But for my own style, usually, yeah, I switch, you know. But a lot of most of the white neurotic stuff, it's usually a neck pickup. And this is also a little bit, I mean, because now I have the single coil here in the neck position. Obviously, it doesn't have the same kind of output, right? So you have to hit the notes maybe a little bit clearer or even harder, you know, because a lot of people say, oh, playing a neck pickup is cheating, but actually you notice when you go from the bridge pickup and you go to the single coil, you know, it's like you need to play a little bit more defined for the notes to come out the same way. So it's not really cheating. It's actually it's a sound aesthetic kind of thing that I like doing this, you know.
Absolutely, man. Like, I don't know. If anybody ever told me that playing on the neck pickup was cheating, I'd say that they're probably high. I mean, like, that's crazy talk.
Yeah. You know,
I mean, like,
it's just a sound thing. I just think it sounds better for wide neuralic stuff in the higher register. You know, it's just the way it is, in my opinion.
Absolutely, it's got a smoother tone. It's more and it's warmer. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you referenced Ingwe. You know, he's always switching back and forth with the greatest of ease and everything. And you know, when he gets really high, he does like all the 16th note runs or triplets and stuff. You know, he's switches to the bridge pickup, but like the arpeggios, I think just sound better. And like with your style, especially, it's so smooth and like, and that's one thing is it's articulate. And, you know, that's one reason that I love your playing. And, you know, you did a jazz fusion record.
Yeah. Not really a complete jazz fusion record, but a couple of jazz fusion tunes, you know, on my last record. Yeah.
Man, that thing was great. And I tried to look. Yeah, it was awesome. I remember you posted it on Facebook and I was like, let's check this out. And I was like, shit, this is great. And what is the name of that album?
Well, there's a couple of things. So here's the thing. So this is actually ties back into what I was just talking about with regards to what I'm doing right now, because, you know, I did this. I mean, there's always been a couple of fusion elements on my first two solo records also, but then there was this thing. I had this idea with Danny Tunker, who used to be in Alkaloid. We wanted to do a fusion record, a guitar fusion record, right? Where we basically, kind of like Richie Kotzen and Greg Howe did in the 90s, where basically each of us would write 4 songs, but everyone would play also on the songs of the other player, right? And we would exchange those. So we did this one single. This is the song called Rubber Duck, which is on my YouTube channel, right? And I wrote that song, and Danny and me split basically the solos 50-50 and the themes. And but then he kind of dropped off the project, and then I wrote some other. I did one more tune in that style. I have a song called Deep Space Sharp 11, which was on my last solo record called Part of the Hero. And Rubber Duck actually also is on the Japan version of that record as a bonus track. And now but a lot of the other songs on the record were more like in a neoclassical style. So my next thing that I'm doing outside of Obscura is I'm doing this solo EP, which is like a 5-track EP, 4 or 5-track EP. I think it's only 5 tracks. I mean, I've written a couple of tunes now, which is completely going to be in that style. So it's going to be completely in the jazz fusion style, no neoclassical, no fast double bass, no metal elements, like really completely like hard rock, funk, fusion, blues, jazz, you know, like make a fusion of all of these things, but actually like this heavy, this like heavy fusion kind of style, you know, like Greg Howe played in the 90s or Richie Kotzen. And so this record is going to be completely in that style. And I might even re-record Rubber Duck and maybe some other tunes that are more in that style. So I'm not sure if I'm doing just an EP with new tunes or if I'm doing like an 8-track album with like some re-recordings as well. So I'm still thinking about that. But the idea is that the whole thing is going to be in that jazz fusion style, you know? Like it's kind of like I'm writing kind of like hard rock riffs, you know, listening to Lynch Mob or Van Halen or Badlands or something, but then mixing it with like jazz harmony, you know, and like with John Coltrane or Charlie Parker kind of stuff, and mixing that in the same composition. So that's basically the approach that I had for those songs, and I'm actually quite happy with how they turned out. And I just need to find some time to actually record them, you know.
Man, that's rad. I'm looking forward to that because that Rubber Duck track is just freaking killer. I mean, it was just like you talked like Greg Howe and Richie Kotzen, and you know, and like Richie Kotzen's this you know, fingerstyle Telecaster dude now, which is really cool, and he's got like the winery dog thing going on. But like, I mean, remember watching his REH video like back in the day? That dude can freaking play, man. He was
watching
awesome.
this every day in the 90s. I think I got this around 96 or something. I was watching this every day and kind of like copying. At one point, I could play all the licks from that record, and then I got into Greg Howe because I discovered Greg Howe through Richie Kotzen, through this record they did together. Greg Howe in the 90s, obviously it was before there was YouTube or the internet wasn't really a thing, really, right? So I was ordering the records from America, and took some 6 weeks until they would arrive, and then there was no videos, there was no transcription books, nothing, right? And I was just listening to the stuff, and I was like, man, how does it do that? So what I would just transcribe the stuff and listen to it over and over and over again, hours every day for a year, and then figuring out how to play things. Some things I think I got right. I mean, nowadays you can see him play a lot on YouTube and Instagram and stuff like that. Some things I'm like I see and like, oh, that's how it's actually done, right? I figured it out a little bit differently, and that really shaped my style a lot. And I've always wanted to do a record in that style, and I figured, and I think this goes for every genre. Same thing goes for technical death metal. If I want to do a Greg Howe style record, for example, I mean, I don't want to copy him. I just want to do something in that kind of mindset. What's important with that, and this is an advice I usually give my students always, is like, when you want to understand a certain style, you have to understand the influences of that player as well. What did they listen to? Where did that come from, right? So if you like Greg Howe, for example, like, okay, he liked Eddie Van Halen and George Lynch and Warren DeMartini and Red and stuff like that. So you kind of get that influence, right? Then you understand, okay, he was listening to Prince and Michael Jackson, so you get this funky kind of element. And then you're like, oh, he studied players like George Benson or Larry Carlton, or listen to Charlie Parker or something, right? And then you study that. And then with the sum of these, by breaking up the influences of the players or bands you like, then you kind of understand better where they're coming from, and then you do your own take on things. Because I notice a lot, for example, in the tech death world, a lot of newer bands, they just listen to other tech death bands, right? So they listen to Obscura and Necrophagist and Beyond Creation, and they're like, oh, I want to do a band in that style, and that's all they listen to. And then they don't really understand where the style is coming from, right? So when you want to play technical death metal, you have to understand, when we did Necrophagist or Obscura, there was obviously bands like Death and Cynic and Atheist and Suffocation, but then there was this heavy metal influence and this Yngwie Malmsteen stuff and the Shredman stuff, and you kind of put that together, and then something new starts emerging from that, right? So whenever you like a player or a band, you're like, man, I would like to do something in that style, I find it's very, very important to go back. What did those guys listen to? How did they combine these different kind of worlds? Because I've been talking about this with my friend Alex Holzwart, the drummer of Rhapsody, and he said, like old stuff, like for example, Merciful Fate, Don't Break the Oath, those guys, they were combining the hard rock and heavy metal influences from the 70s and early 80s with the stuff that the funk players did, like with Pat Travers Band and something like that. And that's why these records are still timeless and you can still listen to them. And I always find that this crossover in music is actually very important, from different genres, merging them into something new. And I feel a lot of newer bands, they don't do that. They just listen to other bands exactly in the style they want to play, and that's all they listen to, but they don't really understand where it's coming from. And I find that is very, very important.
I agree, man. And I remember I was fortunate enough to take a couple lessons from you. Mm-hmm. And that's one thing we talked about is like how and the why, and why is so important. And when you talk about understanding where people got their style from, and that's what made you unique as a player in technical death metal or in death metal in general, was that your style sounded, it was different than just just shredding or like the Slayer style going on. I mean, people had like the Yngwie thing going on for a while, but definitely like the Greg Howe elements with the tapping stuff that you did or do. And I remember seeing that Greg Howe Starlux video is the most terrifying intro to any guitar video of all freaking time. Anytime anybody says something about, oh, this guy's, I'm like, dude, you have to see this. And that's my default and to go to. And you can definitely hear his influence and Richie's in your playing. But I remember you also told me about Joey Caffola.
Oh yeah,
and that deal is insanely good too.
Yeah, but like Joey Caffola, I think this. So I have a huge actually collection of Shrapnel records, and I have almost all of them original. And I mean, this album here, Out of the Sun, the first Joey Caffola solo record. This is probably my favorite instrumental guitar record of all time, simply because the songwriting is so good on that, right? I mean, it's a neoclassical type record in the style of the first Tony McAlpine records or the first Vinnie Moore record, but I find this album is definitely the strongest melodies and the strongest compositions out of all of them. Actually, Tony McAlpine apparently helped a little bit with the production and some of the melodies. He plays keyboards actually on that record.
Wow!
Gilbert does a couple of guest solos. Some of Paul Gilbert's best solos, actually, this album, and the compositions are just so good. And I like when I listened to this record, I wasn't really trying to learn any of the songs like what he's doing on guitar, but I was like paying attention to the chord progressions, the key modulations, and things like that, and I would write them down. And this influenced many of my compositions in my solo record actually on the last Obscura record, there's a lot of like stuff that has kind of in the vibe of that record in terms of the chord progressions, Eternity's End stuff. Obviously, the name Eternity's End comes from that record because it's the first track of that record is called Eternity's End. And then Joy DeFalla is very interesting because on his second record, he completely switched styles. This is the second one, Infra Blue. There's amazing bass playing on the record by a guy called John Onder and drummer Steve Castronova. And he went on this one more into this Michael Firkins or Steve Morse kind of like country, jazz, blues, hard rock, kind of with a more swing shuffle kind of feel. And this is also a little bit of a blueprint for my next solo EP, you know, where I kind of want to be a lot in that style. And so, yeah, he's definitely one of the really great ones for me, even though he's not as well known as some other players from the time period. He's not as well known as Marty or Jason Becker or Paul Gilbert because he wasn't in as big bands as they were, obviously. And he also played in this US power metal band called Jack Panzer, and there's this record called The Forced Judgment. I don't have it here right now, it's in the other room, but actually, in my opinion, this is some of the best metal guitar solos ever recorded, you know, and his style is also like super, super smooth, and it was like, I didn't really copy any of his licks, but it was like, I was listening to him and I was like, that's kind of the sound aesthetic, you know, that I want. So, and that's actually the reason. Also because the Forced Judgment record, it came out in 97. And I remember I was like 15 or 16 at the time. And I was listening to this every day. And I was like, man, this is the craziest guitar playing I ever heard. And also the tone, the sound-wise, you know. And then later on, because now through Facebook, you can talk to everyone, right? So I became friends with Joy a little bit. And he told me because I was like, man, what amps did you use on that Forced Judgment record? And he said it was Bogner amps, you know. And that is the decision, because on the last Obscura record, Ever Addiction, we were in the studio with Freddie Nordström in Sweden, and I was like, I kind of want that lead tone, something in that ballpark, you know. And there's Bogner amp, so we had Bogner there, and we tried it, and it sounded really good. And then he said, hey, I've got something even better. So he brought an amp by some Swedish brand who takes Bogner amps and modifies them, and supercharges them, you know, like putting a turbo in or something like that. And that's then the amp that we actually used on the record, but I forgot the name of the brand. But it's a very small shop that basically just takes Bogner amps and takes those which are already like super high-end amps to the next level. And it has this almost clean kind of distortion. It has this singing kind of distortion. It's very high gain, but it's kind of very defined and clean in a way, you know?
Right.
So, and that goes back to Joy DeFalla also because of the Forced Judgment record, actually, right? And that,
Yeah, he's a great guitar player, man. And like, I'll have to go back and make sure that I've listened to all that stuff because I mean, the guy's just awesome. And freaking, that's another good question. When you're recording or tracking, do you like using plugins or do you like the sound of a real amp? Do you feel that it's to me, like using plugins is cool, but like and I get the whole benefit of like being able to like, you know, change your tone and this and that. And it's more possibilities. Like it's convenient and this and that. And it's, you know, but do you actually like to plug into an amp when you're tracking and actually just go from there?
No, because I'm tracking at home, right? I can't really put a 412 stack here and microphone it because they really sound good when they're really loud.
Why not?
What I'm doing is I'm using the Axe effects for recording, but you know, it's set up as an interface as well, so it records the I track at the same time. And the Axe effects, I mean, still a real tube amp is a few percent better, you know, because because the main thing is how it reacts to your playing. And I think you play differently with something that reacts different, especially when it comes to stuff like fast picking or vibrato and things like that. You really the reaction of the tubes really affects how you also play. But as I said, I can't really do that at home. So what I did, and I have a very specific idea in mind for my guitar tones. When there's no high-end Bogner amps around, usually my go-to is like a 6560 or 5150 Van Halen amp with a tube screamer kind of setup. And that's always been my go-to tone for 15 years or something. But what I did with the XFX, I reprogrammed this analog setup, and I spent many hours until it sounded and reacted almost exactly the same. I mean, there's still like a 2% difference, probably just of the nature of analog stuff, but with that tone I play pretty much the same way that I play when I play the analog setup. And then because it's the interface, I track the I tracks, and then usually in the studio I reamp. So on the last Eternity's End record, we also used a 6560 with a tube screamer, and we reamp these tracks to the real setup, you know, which is actually very close in tone to what I already record with. but still it has this extra, this 2% extra, you know, to kind of make it better. But there's even some records where the lead tone that you hear is actually XFX. So, for example, my last 2 solo records, the first 2 Alkaloid records, I think even on the new Alkaloid record, I think the solos might even be my preset tone. I don't think Hannes reamped those, but he reamped them for the Eternity's End record, and we also reamped them for the Obscura record. But actually, some of the albums I'm on, you actually hear my actual XFX tone.
Wow, that's interesting, man. Like, I mean, it sounds fantastic, and I guess it's just a testament to the quality of you know, the company and what the product that they're making. Because I mean,
you know, this thing is like a doctor thesis or even more. It has so many functions that basically I just use my standard sound. You know, like this one lead tone that I have, and that's basically what I use. And it can do so much more, but I mean, just being able to model that stuff in that quality is actually great. Yeah, it's just for convenience reasons, obviously, right? Because you know, it's like when you record at home, you can record whenever inspiration strikes you, and you feel like, oh, don't have the fluency today that I would like to have. Then like I come back to it a couple of hours later. In the studio, you don't have that luxury because every minute costs money. The clock is ticking, and you just have to be done in a certain time, which can also be good because a little bit more in the moment and more honest. But you know, I've had it. Here's the thing: I've been thinking about it a lot, and I kind of like having things spontaneous and just like, oh, that is what it is. But I've noticed so many times, sometimes I just don't like when a record comes out and there's something on it where I feel, man, I could have done better if I had taken more time with it, you know. And I just don't want that ever to happen again. And that's why I just prefer recording at home. Because I remember this happened on the second Eternity's End record, Unyielding. What happened was I was doing all the rhythm guitars. I was very busy with work. There was a lot of stuff going on at the time, you know, that was in my life, and I was busy constantly working on the rhythm guitars and things like that. And then the label was making pressure, and we have to deliver the record in next week, you know. And I was like, fuck, I still haven't done my individual solos. I did all the harmonies with Phil, and Phil did his solos, and then I had like 4 or 5 days to do all my solos, and a lot of it is like first take improvs and stuff like that. And it's kind of cool because it's real and it's in the moment. But I'm like, when I go back to the record, I was like, it's one of these things, you know. I'm like, man, I wish I could have taken more time and put more solos, edited things a little bit more, maybe, you know, made it sound a little bit better. And I couldn't do that because of the time pressure. But usually recording at home, you can avoid that, right? In a proper time schedule, you know. So.
Absolutely, man. Like, and that's just the luxury that we have now, being able to do things at home, and you know, it makes it more convenient. I think it also makes for better performances because you're able to think about things. Because, like you said, in the studio, time is money and everything like that. Yeah. But Christian, I really appreciate you joining me, dude. It means a lot. You're an awesome guitar player. I highly recommend, if anybody doesn't know who this guy is, you're living under a rock. But if that's the case, go check out all the awesome work he's done. And I have one more question for you. Are you going to be at NAMM this year?
I will. Next year, you mean, right? Like, I think it's in
January. Yeah, excuse me. Yeah.
Is it what month is it? Because I have to make sure I'm not on tour then. Because we're having this European tour with Cynic in March, but it ends March 31. So
I think NAMM is in January again this year.
January this time, actually. I think I'm going to be there. I just have to look up the exact date, because I know Stefan is also going to be there. And now that I have my signature model, I could play a little bit at the Siggi booth. So yeah, I'll definitely be at NAMM. So I'll definitely see you there, and some other familiar faces, I guess.
Absolutely, man. I'll be there, dude. It'll be nice to meet you again in person. But thank you very much for being on the show. Is there anything you want to say before we go?
Thanks for the invitation. Like I said, to people who haven't really checked out some of my stuff, please go ahead and do so. If you're only at Obscura, maybe also check out some of my other bands, my solo records, Eternity's End, Alkaloid. Make sure to check out the Retromorphosis record that's dropping soon next year. Really excited about that one. And that's it. Thanks for the invitation. Always a pleasure talking to you. And then I'll see you at NAMM, I guess.
Yes, sir. Have a good day, dude.
Likewise. Talk to you soon, huh?
Yeah, yes, sir. All right. Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Cheers.